All right, we are live. I am excited today, excited to chat with you, Michelle. Just about leadership, about what you're up to, how you're impacting the world, and just excited to talk about the conference. And I'm so excited to have you involved in all the great things. So, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Well, first of all, I think we're going on our year anniversary, Jim, of when we met out in California.
I was gonna say it's
It's been-
coming up, right?
It feels like a very intense year and a lot's transpired and a lot of exciting things. So I could not be more excited to be with you in Nashville in September for the Impact 2024 event. I think it's going to be phenomenal. And what's so exciting to me is that it's a different kind of event, that it really is going to be about connecting with people, being among the conference participants, and really helping to get people not only excited about what they can be doing in their lives in terms of elevating their leadership, but helping them activate before they even leave the conference.
Yes.
That's what really has me jazzed.
Yes, it's one of those things where I think the difference is the people, the facilitators, you, the other speakers, because y'all just care a lot. You care about the opportunity at hand to influence and impact people. And I think that's the biggest difference. You know, there's so much alignment, and there's so much alignment with you and I that we see the benefit of doing it a certain way, and it's very similar, you know?
Well, and we've seen it happen in different ways where people don't get the value of what they're looking for when they go to a conference, because it is an investment. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of resources. So to be able to deliver value that can be acted on and not just something that they sort of store away in their mind of, wow, I got really excited, but I'm not sure what to do with this information, is what typically happens after a conference, and I've been to many over the years. And so what it really just excites me is this opportunity to really understand what people are working on, to talk about leadership in all its forms, at home, in your community, in your organizations, in your business, and to talk about what that means. One of the things that you asked me about, Jim, that really got me excited was, what is the most important characteristic that leaders need to be aware of or think about? And I said, oh, this is an easy one. It's authenticity. It's the most underrated superpower, because everyone's like, oh, authenticity, it's a $3 word. Everyone's table stakes. Everyone's talking about it. But nobody's really understanding what it means to live it. And the reason is because our society really demands conformity. Yes. Whether you're in school, whether you're in an organization. I was a leader for more than 25 years in organizations that, without you really even realizing it, there's a certain culture that then kind of conditions you to behave a certain way. And so you sort of check your authentic self at the door often, because why? When we show up as our authentic selves, you have to be ready to be vulnerable. It takes a lot of courage, because when you share what your values are, you state your point of view, you face potential blowback, criticism, people not accepting you, not belonging. And what is the one thing that all humans want? To belong. We all want to belong. And so in the face of potentially being criticized or pushed back, we're like, I'm going to hold back on that point of view, even though that's really how I feel. And the problem with that is it breeds distrust without you really even trying. This is not like, people are walking around trying to deceive one another. Everyone's trying to be careful because it's a psychological safety issue. Nobody wants to feel like they don't belong. Everybody wants to fit in. And the problem is we need more people with the courage to say, I might not fit in, but I'm going to belong to myself. And when I belong to myself, I belong everywhere I go. And then I'm going to give you permission to show up as your authentic self. And it's going to be safe for you to tell me what you think, even if I don't agree with you. It's going to be safe for you to tell me what your values are, even if they're not the exact same values, because it's an environment where we're not competing. We put down the competition, and authenticity breeds collaboration. It says, wow, I love how you show up because energetically, I get you. I feel it. I feel the connection. And so I can show up as myself and I have permission to do so. I'm not stepping on glass wondering, when the other shoe is going to fall and how we all have to behave because the leader sets the tone. And I'm not sure. And look, this happens at homes, this happens in communities, right? Where you have certain leaders that maybe have been doing things a certain way over many years and they've been successful at getting things done. And so everyone's like, well, they've been so great at getting that done. We're all just going to, I know they're a bit quirky or this or that, but that's just the way things are. And it doesn't breed the opportunity to have a much more transparent and open and authentic experience. And so we need to really show up vulnerable, willing to share. And I don't mean every explicit detail of our personal lives, but who we are, what we value most, and what our points of view are, so that when we are connecting, there's an energetic exchange that's transparent, that's open, that's really breeding this idea of connection and trust.
Mic drop. I have nothing to add. That was beautiful. Wow. Thank you for that, Michelle. That was, it really had me thinking about several things. One being, we're afraid to be authentic. We're afraid to be transparent. We're afraid to be ourselves because it takes work, right? And it takes work not only to understand yourself, but it takes work to be courageous. It takes energy to be courageous, to navigate some of those conversations, right? And in some cases, when you're living authentic, in my opinion, um, you're doing things that may not align with some other folks. You may be disrupting. You may be impacting in a different way,
You're
right?
1,000% correct. Authentic leaders are disruptors by nature. And that's one of the phrases that I've never really liked. And I know this is why, is I don't want to rock the boat. When I hear somebody say that, I'm like, oh, so what part of you are we going to get? Because you don't want to rock the boat. Because what happens is, again, nobody's inadvertently like showing up and saying, I'm really trying to be in a place that's not authentic. What they're saying is, I want to be liked. I want to be accepted. I want to succeed. I'm trying to read the room. I'm trying to see what it takes to get ahead. And that happens often with the most inexperienced leaders.
Yes.
Or the most experienced leaders, because they're so used to this is the way all things have always been done. It really takes somebody stepping out of the group and saying, I might stand alone. It's not a comfortable place to be. Everybody wants to belong. That's the bottom line. Everybody wants to belong. Anybody who says, no, I don't want to belong is lying. We all want to belong, but belonging is different than fitting in. And when we are not ourselves, in order to fit in, when we change our point of view or we tweak what we really believe in order to satisfy what we think the other people are expecting of us, we fracture ourselves. People don't know how to interact with us. They don't know we're not going to be ourselves in all facets of our lives. And we don't even recognize oftentimes that energetic exchange is obvious. People who sit in authenticity and can be very lonely at times can feel the energetic change of when somebody is showing up with a mask. And again, it's just like a stage of evolution in human development. This isn't like everybody's walking around with a mask on and there are a bunch of people who don't. It's like a stage of everybody has a mask on. We all want to in our families, in our schools, in our universities, and our organizations. And slowly but surely, as you get brave, you start to take them off and say, okay, but this is how I really believe. And this is what I think. I'll give you an example, Jim, because this is a tough one I'm going through at home. And I bet you a lot of parents a lot of parents will relate to this, whether you have small children or you have adult children. I have a teenager who is going to be a senior in high school and he's applying to colleges. He's a very outgoing kid, If you saw him, he'd say super popular. He's, great grades. He's the captain of his soccer team. And yet he just wrote a personal statement about not belonging. And I'm sitting
Wow.
here going, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm 50% Peruvian and I'm 50% Caucasian. So I don't really fit in that bucket. I don't really look Latin, but I have strong Latin roots. And my Latin family sees me as different because I look different. I'm more fair than not. So I
Yep.
stick out like a sore thumb in that group. And even though I speak Spanish, they all want to speak broken English to me because I look more American.
Wow.
Like, so I feel this feeling of not quite, I'm different than all my cousins who are 100% Latin. He's like, then I'm in school. I go to sign up for the Latin club, the Latinx club. And the president of the club, he was a sophomore when this happened, tells me, you don't belong. You're not 100%. And he said, this was 2022 when it happened. He's like, we're supposed to be talking about inclusion. And
Yeah.
my dad's an immigrant. What gives? Why can't I be part of this group? And then he's like, on the soccer field, I'm great. I'm captain. We get along well. Everything's great, but I'm not a big partier. So socially, I'm often not invited to the parties on the weekend. He's like, and I feel left out. But to be honest, I'd rather be home working on piano or music. And he's like, I've had to come to the conclusion that in order to belong to myself, I might not always fit in. And I was like
Wow.
blown away
Wow.
at the level of reflection of this 17-year-old of realizing, he's probably been a lonely experience of high school by and large, even though it seems like
Yep.
he's in all these different groups. He doesn't actually feel like he's 100% belonging to any of them because he's a little different in each scenario.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
if that's happening to the kids that look like, super popular and good looking and good grades and athletic, it's happening to everybody on some level,
Everybody. Of
right?
course. Of course. Well, I think too that level of belonging, and you talked about it previously, relates back to a level of comfort, right? And so when things aren't comfortable, or when we want comfortability, the easy route could be to go that way rather than disrupt, rather than lead with authenticity, like you were talking about, right? And being transparent. Um,
The biggest
it's
Oh, absolutely, go ahead.
No, I was just thinking through of, one of the situations early in my career when I was in the corporate field as a leader was, you know, I would stand up to senior leadership regarding my opinion. And I remember the owner of the company at one point admired the fact that I wasn't just yes, yes, yes at everything. Right now, there was also a level of immaturity to where I took it overboard sometimes,
Right.
right? Where it was like, let's just let that one slide, and I learned how to pick, the fights that were more important and what required more energy, and where there was allies.
Yeah.
But as a leader, that was admired from the top in that organization because it wasn't happening with the other folks at the executive level. Have you ever experienced that or been a part of a situation where you've seen people being rewarded by certain leaders for disrupting or bringing a different opinion that may not feel comfortable, or may kind of go against shake the boat, like you said, purposefully?
Yeah, I mean, what you just described really is akin to what I experienced, but in the reverse. I very early on modeled the leaders I saw because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to succeed. I tried to read the room. I was a bit of a chameleon, and I would check my personal self at the door every time I walked through the doors, and never realized how over time I was actually losing myself in doing that. I was actually succeeding on some level. But what happened was, and it's interesting what you mentioned about someone at the very top noticing that, the middle management loved me. I got stuff done. I was a yes girl. I no wasn't in my vocabulary. I didn't have good boundaries. I stayed late. I came early. I worked weekends. That's great for middle management often because they're not disruptors. They are get things done, keep things moving often. And so what happened was it got me up the ladder. And then guess what? came to a screeching halt and I hit a wall. And I was like, why am I not moving up anymore? Why am I not moving up anymore? It took a coach to actually help me step back and realize, because you're not showing up as yourself. You're showing up the way you think everybody wants you to be. Why don't we try this differently? Actually, put down the masks because it's exhausting and you're draining yourself. Start showing up as you. Take care of you first. Show up as yourself and watch how everything shifts. And you're right. Like, what started to happen is I ruffled feathers among the middle management. They were like, well, who does she think she is? Kind of thing. But the people at the very top were like, we want her at the next meeting.
Yeah.
Is she available to go on the next pitch? And over time, it quantum leaped my career. I ended up changing organizations. I was in the executive suite, and then I became like the CEO whisperer because I was willing to show up as myself in all instances. But it took me maturing. I was probably, I was a mom well along my journey before somebody had the courage to stop me and say, do you really want some advice on how to supercharge your career? Because it's like you're running in place right now and it's exhausting, isn't it?
Wow.
And I was like, I'm ready to hit. I don't know what else to do. Like, I need my career. We're a 2-income family and I feel like I'm running in place. And they're like, because you're not being authentic and everyone can feel it.
Wow.
The resentment's pouring out of your ears, whether or not you know it, even though you're saying nothing, it's just pouring out of all your pores. So
that
just
energy transfer. Yeah.
stop the act, stop trying to figure out what everyone wants you to be, put some boundaries in place, show up as yourself, and watch what happens when you share how you really feel. And it was, I don't want to say miraculous, but it was pretty overnight where people were like, why hasn't this Michelle shown up at meetings? But again, it actually caused some rifts with people that would have been in my peer set or in a level right above me. I lost a lot of friendships in the short term because people felt threatened. I was stepping out of the norm. I was leaving the group conformity and I was starting to act like an actual leader.
Yes.
And be disruptive. Share my points of view that often went against the grain. Would say, you know what? I don't think we should pursue that piece of business. Here's why. And they'd be like, we should pursue every piece of business. I'm like, no, we shouldn't. Like, it's draining us and our people. And if our people are our best assets, we're not demonstrating that. And then I had the CEO going, you come with me. Let's go. It completely changed my career. Oh, I wouldn't say overnight. I had a long corporate career, probably more than most entrepreneurs do, but I was in it for a really long time. But that change from probably 15 years of being in the trenches and pushing the boulder uphill, Jim, because I didn't have the courage to be 100% authentic. I was a phenomenal worker. People would have said, she's the hardest worker. She deserves a promotion. She's doing so much work. Clients love her. But the disruptors at the top were like, there's something off with her energy, because it was off. I wasn't showing up as myself. And when I did, some things have to fall to the wayside. And there were some relationships that were based on conformity, were based on fitting in, that no longer fit the rubric. Because it is disruptive when you show up as yourself, and it takes courage. And there is something to be said. It is lonely at the top, but you got to be willing to stand alone, to stand your truth, because that's where freedom is. I never felt more free. I never felt more energized. I never felt more impactful than when I made the decision to step away from the pack and step out in the face of immediate criticism in the surroundings around me in order to stand my truth.
How did you navigate some of that criticism in those moments? Can you bring us back to some of those conversations or places? Because, this is something that, is disruptive. And I think that's where people go, okay, I know I need to do this. I know I need to do this, but I'm scared of what's going to come, right? That level of fear, that level of, well, if I rock the boat, I could lose my job. I could be transferred. I could be demoted. I may lose leverage that I have. There could be some important relationships that diminish that I was seeking or worked for or thought would be very beneficial to me. Talk to us a little bit about how you kind of navigated that, because it sounds like this was the slingshot to your growth, and in a time where you needed it most.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, I had at the time when this was all happening, I had a 3-year-old, and I felt that increasingly he was watching me and seeing the stress I was walking through the door each night with, and all the different all of the different considerations of all the different personalities of working in a big corporation and being part of the rising leadership and trying to navigate that. It kind of came to a point where I realized I no longer knew who I was. I mean, to be very honest, it was a dark period where I was like, I have sort of sold myself to fit in all of these places in order to keep my job and keep my career and keep growing, and thinking that that was the best way to preserve it. And I actually held myself back. And
Wow.
so I get the fear. It's real, it's a legitimate fear. But what I experienced, and I can again only talk about it through my lens, and I can talk about it through the lens of a lot of my clients, is that when you step out in courage and you are authentic, what is aligned for you will start to materialize. And the things that you thought that you needed so desperately, like that particular job or that particular career track or that particular boss, might actually go away. But that's only because it's making room for what's truly aligned for you. And if you have the courage to go through the discomfort, because it's an uncomfortable road, you will actually fare better and you will likely make more money, because when your self-worth is increased, which is inevitably what happens when you show up as your authentic self, your confidence goes through the roof because you're not pretending anymore.
There's
You don't
clarity. Yeah,
suffer
you
from
have
imposter
clarity.
syndrome. You have
Yep.
a lot of clarity. When that happens, when your self-worth goes up, your net worth goes up. It's a direct correlation. I've never seen it happen in the reverse. Maybe in a short term, but not in the long term.
Totally. Totally. You talked about the energy transfer earlier. And one of the things that when I was thinking through like how you show up, right? You can put the smile on, you can have the nice press jacket, you can have, a Boston Scally like Jim wears often. Right? You can have all the things,
Yeah, you can
but
look
if
the part.
but if inside, it's oozing out of you. One of the things that I was thinking about when you were saying that was like, you know, we had Janine Driver join us at the conference last year, right? And she was in the FBI, the ATF, and we were talking about TED Talks earlier. She's got 12 million views on hers, right? And she was talking to me about, you've really got to work on the inside because body language shows up 5 seconds before verbal.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking through, I'm like, if my energy isn't right, if my mindset, if the inside isn't working, well, how am I showing up as a leader? Even though I think everything's great. And what I realized is some people can pick up on this within seconds, right? And some people can't. But the reality of it is as we progress, as we put ourselves around people who understand body language, who understand this aspect of leadership, who have worked on themselves, who
Yeah.
have been in those places, we tend to see more of those people. So as we continue to rise up and build bigger networks of people in more alignment and more authenticity, the majority of people see that, feel that, and read that body language and that energy. So it was really interesting because now that I've been in that place, right? I've been put the suit on and dying inside, literally, like
Oh, me
just
too.
just consuming my problems with alcohol at that point in my life, right? Like obnoxiously. Um, but it was only a few people who have gone through that could really see that. And as I went through that period and I grew and I understood and I worked on the inside and became more authentic and stepped into the reality of the life that I was living and that I wanted, those people could see it. And when it's a good energy transfer, when it's an authentic, when you're in your calling, you're in your zone, you're living your passion, right?
Yeah.
That emotion, that energy transfer is electric. And
It's
this
magnetic.
conversation, right? Just this conversation has me feeling electric because of the alignment, because of the transfer of you and I, and we've both been there, right? And we both have shared similar situations and scenarios just in this conversation today, mind you, our relationship, right? So it's so interesting to me that physically you can see it, energetically you can feel it, and we tend to forget that. We tend to, think that we're showing up in a way that is transparent or that is, 70%. And I think we've got to give it 100% of who we are, and we've got to be real 100% of the time. And you're
Oh,
right. It's uncomfortable, and we may disrupt, but I also believe that if you're not doing those things, there may be a time of regret, and that time may come soon. It may come on the last legs of your life. It may come in a decision that you needed to be good, you needed to be aligned, you needed to be yourself, and you weren't. And you may miss some of those opportunities in the future. So I just love this conversation because it's so, so important. And I think it relates to anybody, excuse me, in any aspect, in any level of leadership, in any level of having a family or leading a team or teammates or, a business. It's so important to show up as yourself because I think we all want that.
we do all want that. And here's the interesting thing. As you know, I've been working on a book that's going to be coming out later this year, early next year. And one of the biggest motivators behind that was realizing that a lot of the experiences that I've been through, that you've been through, that we share in common, so many people do. And what it happens is that most people, and I would argue probably 98% of people, not scientifically based, but look, I talk to a lot of people, it's a high percentage, sit on the sidelines of their lives, wringing their wrists, looking at the people who have the courage to be authentic and to pursue their dreams and take the risks and do the things that they haven't quite yet mustered the courage for. And they say, wouldn't that be nice? Wow, they're so lucky. And they sit in a cage with the door wide open.
Wow.
And they don't let themselves out. And it's so unfortunate. And I said, this is, I came from that background where a lot of people are like, wouldn't that be nice? But that's for someone else, not for me. And having gone down this road and having lived what I lived, one of the most important things for me now is to give back, to go back to those roots, to go back to those people who knew me when, and to say, no, they're not lucky. They're courageous, and you can be too.
Yes.
This is your life. The last thing you want to do is sit on the sidelines of your own life. It's yours, and it can be extraordinary. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. An extraordinary life is not a perfect life. An extraordinary life means you show up fully human to experience it all, which means the joy and the grief, the good and the bad, the light and the dark, but you experience it fully. So when you sit back, hopefully at the end of a very long life, and someone says, or you contemplate, did I live a good life? I hope you sit back and say, absolutely, it was extraordinary. That's what you want. You don't want to get to the end and go, I wish I had had the courage to live the life I really wanted to live.
Yes. Well, the excuses come out at that point, and unfortunately, the excuse is no one's fault but your own, and you're right. It's hard, and you have to sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Sometimes you have to make decisions and learn from lessons, and there's some L's in that, right? Like
Well,
I saw a quote the other day, and they were like, there's 2 L's in million. Just think about that.
in mind. Well, I think that you live this legacy, Jim. I think a lot of people look at the success and don't see the road of hardship that is paved in the road to success. And to be able to say, look, we're having these conversations that energize us because we know it's been hard. It hasn't always been easy. In fact, it's been less easy than it's been hard. But has it been worth it? 1,000%. Would you do it again? 1,000%.
Yes.
When you're living authentically, you take the risks, you do the things because you're not worried about losing. You're not worrying about failing. You're more concerned about not living authentically. You're more concerned about not living fully. You're more concerned about not using all the gifts you know you have to give.
Yes.
And you're more concerned about the fact that I have an opportunity to help wake people up, because it really is an awakening, right? When you're like, wake up, stop sitting on the sidelines of your life, get in. We need you. We need you to be fully you and to use your gifts and to show up and to turn it on. Because when you do this, you give permission to the next person and the next person. And this is what creates dynamic communities. This is what creates dynamic organizations. This is what creates amazing businesses. Not when we sit back and we hold it in and we try not to take up space and we play small and we don't take risks.
Take risks, yes. And I think that's the biggest thing is, are you taking an immediate risk right now, or are you risking your entire life to have regret at the end? And I would put all my my money on an immediate risk where I believe that there's passion behind something, I can create massive impact and change. The risk of regret, I think, outweighs anything in the short term, right? And
oh yeah,
it's one of those moments where you may lose, and that's what I think is so beautiful, and especially with what you said, an extraordinary life is fully feeling that, right? Like,
I would rather fully be alive and feel all the things I'm here to feel, which means there are going to be really tough days. But I'd rather do that than be sitting in a comatose state trying to play it safe.
you said alive, and I love that adjective, emotion, whatever you want to describe it. And it's funny because we were talking, you were saying, hey, I'm going to come to the TEDx after your conference, after Impact Effect 24 earlier, before we jumped on. And that is an emotion. That is the ending emotion after my talk that I want everybody to feel is the, and I wrote, hopeful and alive.
That's the way we want everyone to feel. That's the problem. I think what we have is there's a dehumanization of the human condition. And the more we can wake people up to say, look, this is not the right state of being. The state of being is to feel fully alive and to recognize it's not about being safe. It's not about like trying to win so that you don't have any losses ever. It's actually about living your truth. And I spent a majority part of my youth trying to fit in, try to play it safe, because I came from we talked about this. Our backgrounds are not all that different. Journeys are slightly different, but socioeconomically hard times, humble beginnings, for me, rural Maine. We're both New Englanders. You get this feeling of everybody wants everyone to just be okay and safe. And what happens is you don't live your truth and you have people drinking, on drugs, overeating, in bad marriages and relationships, just trying to hold it together because they don't know how to be themselves or live their truth. And the idea that we can do the work we do to say, this is not the way it's supposed to be. In fact, failure is part of the success equation. So let go of this idea of play it safe so you never lose. This is like the worst notion ever. And I heard that growing up with the best of intentions from lovely parents, but failure is not an option. That creates a psychological instability that nobody needs. The reality is you want people to live their truth, even if it means you're not going to be successful at something. So for example, I'm writing a book. Do I know at the end of the day that everyone's going to love the book and it's going to have critical acclaim? No, but it's my truth and I'm here to share it. And that's my job. I feel a great responsibility and calling to do that and to through that, hopefully impact people in a positive way. If it sells one book, but it speaks my truth, it's successful. That's all I care about. Like, I got to get it out. And I've started to realize what held me back before when I was younger was, well, I don't want to do anything that I'm going to fail. So I'm only going to pick the things that I know I'm going to be successful at. Well, that's, as you and I both know at this point in life, that's ridiculous, actually. And we've got to get people recognizing that's when we hold ourselves back. And that's when we keep our gifts from getting out into the world. And we got to get people to stop that and to really recognize, look, failure is not fatal. It's just information. It's just information. The most freeing thing, the most electrified state of being is to be your true self.
Yep.
Even if everybody else says, you know what? I don't really agree with you. I don't really, but I'm myself. I'm out of that cage. I've been out of that cage now and I'm never going back. Right. And my job now is to say, come on out of the cage, get off the sidelines, start living your truth, be alive, show us what you got. Take the step out there. I know so many really talented, incredibly intellectual, super successful corporate executives that are dying 1,000 deaths every day because they are sitting behind the desk or the suit going, this is my life and I can't get away from it because they have the golden handcuffs of, I have a really nice life on paper. And I'm sending my kids to college and I've got a beautiful house and we take 2 vacations a year and I don't know how to get out of this, but I'm miserable on the inside. This isn't really who I am. I'd love to try something else, but I'm afraid if I make a move financially, all the house of cards will coming down.
Yes.
And I love working with them because to me, that's talent that's so ripe for the picking. You just need to be able to have them take one step of courage. And then you have that massive talent and experience coming into the world of disruption. But that's not, they've been in the world of conformity to help them realize that that actually is not that big a bridge. You can do that. And you get them on the road of feeling more, surprisingly, self-confident, because a lot of executives aren't that confident, which is, I think, a big secret. Everyone thinks they are, but a lot of them suffer from great insecurity, which is kind of the oxymoron of the work they do. But when you get them on the road to actually living their truth and you set these incredibly talented people out into the world, to me, I'm like, our job is done. Check. Like, we're setting more people out into the world to be authentic and to themselves, who are talented and smart and capable, that have just sort of been over here because that's what they've been told. We are all told, this is the way you do it. This is the way things should be. So
it's so interesting, like the level of how we've learned things. And when you get to that point of, I've got to make a change. It's so bad. Right? Then we start to realize, wow, I need to actually unlearn things. Like I love talking about that aspect, because we always talk about, well, let's add to the toolbox. Let's add this, let's add that. But in most cases, we need to actually remove some things first.
Addition
right?
by subtraction. Absolutely.
Yeah. And as you know, like if it's your business, you can't just add 5 new strategies, right? Like you may not have the associates to do so. You may not have the help. You may not have the employees, right? You may not have teams to do that. So we don't just add 5 things to our business. We have to remove 5 to add 5 in most cases, right? So we can actually accomplish those things. And I look at it similar in my life, almost in my brain. I'm like, what do I have to actually unlearn and remove? Because yeah, there's still space up there, but I don't want to have those 2 conflicting things of opposition, right? And when I think about it, and you talked about like standing on the sidelines, I often look at life as a game, and if life is a game, well, we can unlearn plays in that game. We can add new plays. And we can start on the starting lineup every day, every game.
I love that analogy.
You gotta get off those sidelines that you were talking about and put yourself in the game. There's no coach saying you can't be in it.
I
right? There's
think
no
that
coach in this game besides the coach and the peers that you bring in and consultants and people that have gone through it. But it's still your life. It's still you having to navigate it yourself. So there's guidance, but it's still you showing up on the field, you running that play. And the beauty of it is you're the one that can put yourself in the starting lineup. There's no gatekeeper in this game.
I love the game analogy. And actually, one of my favorite parts, like, I write every day. One of the favorite parts of the book was when I realized that, and it's taken decades to get there, but when I went from playing checkers to chess in my
Yeah.
own game of life. And one of the biggest kind of aha moments for me was I was a leading protagonist in every gameplay I was part of. How about step back and be the observer? How's the game going? How are the plays being run? And
Yes.
when you realize that what makes us us, what makes Jim Jim, what makes Michelle Michelle is, quite frankly, not to get metaphysical on everyone here, but we're spiritual beings. We're having a human experience. And so to the human experience often says we must avoid pain, we must avoid loss. And the spiritual walk is you must go through pain. The adversity is where the growth is. And when you accept that that's actually who we are, spiritual beings having a human experience, the game changes drastically. You do go from playing checkers to chess because
Yes.
then you can say, oh, wait, I don't need to avoid pain. I can go through the experience and know that there's something for me in this. And I can put my guard down and be vulnerable, and I can relax through it. I can observe my life through it and know that this is just one more experience in my life. I don't have to judge it as good or bad and make sure I'm stacking up more good than bad, that this is just another experience. So every time, I've got the podcast and we talk about what does it mean to live an extraordinary life. Most people assume that I'm talking about yachts in the Mediterranean and the latest trip that I've taken to Italy. And I said, well, look, first of all, I love those things. So yes, if you have a yacht in the Mediterranean, please give me a call.
Yes.
But that's not what it is at all. It really is about showing up fully for this human experience and accepting it for what it is, which means a lot of us, if we're lucky, got a whole bunch of bag of adversity early so that we can grow from it and we can get to a place of enlightenment and awakening so that we can wake up the others who didn't have a lot of adversity in the beginning and then are now stuck in this place of just sitting on the sidelines.
It's
I think that
crazy
that's
that
our
you
job.
it's crazy that you bring that up. When I was growing up, I had this phrase, live fast, die young.
Mm.
And in my younger days, I took it very literal. Like, I'm just gonna do whatever I want, and if tomorrow's another day, then I'm lucky, right? And like, I was pretty crazy. I did some crazy things. I remember driving a motorcycle 181 miles an hour the second time I've ever been on a motorcycle, right? Like, but I'm talking about all types of things. And
Yeah,
as I grew, what I realized was that that statement still is very prevalent and very important in my life. But what it means now is I lived fast through a lot of adversity.
mhm.
And what died young was the version of who I used to be. Right. So that live fast, die young isn't this crazy out of control kid anymore who's just saying, hey, I experienced it all. If I don't wake up tomorrow, I don't wake up. It's now this matured adult that says, hey, I'm grateful and thankful for that adversity. I'm grateful and thankful for living so fast and experiencing those things. And I'm also grateful and thankful that I've died. That version of me has died. But I still love that version, right? Because that version at some point along the way made the decision to change, right?
Absolutely.
So I can't hate that version. I can't
No,
hate how I looked at life because that person decided to change and change the perspective. And just on that term, it just brought it up to my mind. I've been thinking about it this week. I actually just came to that realization. This is very fresh in my mind. And I've been thinking about it, and you just sparked it with, with what you said. So it's very dear and near to my heart. But the reality of it is, well, now I've got the opportunity to be who I am today and live a life like that. And in your words, an extraordinary life.
Well, and to your point, as an entrepreneur, what you just said is the motto of fail fast, fail often, if you really want to be successful. And unfortunately, we don't teach our children like that in
Yeah.
mass in society. We need to take it upon us as parents in our own homes to talk about that, because it's not what's being taught in school. It's not what we learn by and large in society. And if we are really going to do each other any justice, it's almost like, quite frankly, a lot of what I'm writing down started off as what do I wish the younger me knew?
Wow.
What is the memo I felt like I missed?
Yep.
Because I did things a certain way because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I wasn't trying to be a rebel. I was trying to fit in. I was trying to succeed. I was trying to be the good girl. I was trying to be responsible. And it got me stuck, and it got me lost, and it got me confused. And the breakthroughs didn't happen until I literally tore up the manual of what I thought was supposed to be, of like the things they told you to do, right? Failure's
Yep.
not an option. There is no safety net. Work, 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 work hard, work harder. And started to step back and say, well, wait a minute. I love to work hard. I am DNA wired to hustle and grind. That's who I am. But I am in masculine overdrive. What about
Yes.
that part of me that's here to receive? Like, where is that? Is that in me? Does that exist? I think I need to excavate that part of me, and to really start to start the memo by saying, hey, FYI, this is a journey. This human existence is a journey. And this journey you're on is not going to be smooth riding all the time. Don't panic.
Yes.
That's okay. You want it to be that way. And if we started telling kids early on, be happy for the adversity, be happy for the days that you weren't included, be happy for the days where you failed, because you're going to succeed over the long term much quicker than those people who never have a bad day in their life until they hit 30 or 40.
Totally. Wow. What a conversation today, Michelle.
Oh, it's been such a thrill to be able to
My brain is on fire. I'm like, wow, okay. Kicking it into overgear as we go into the afternoon today.
Well, I hope that for everyone listening, that they will, again, if you haven't already, tune into the fact that we have this Impact 2024 event coming up September 17th and 18th in Nashville, Tennessee. And there's an amazing lineup of speakers and facilitators. And Jim's just brought together the most fantastic people. And it's going to be extraordinary.
It is. Yes. Thank you so much, Michelle. And hopefully y'all can join us and meet Michelle. You know, one of the cool things and one of the things I'm just so proud about with this conference this year is the fact that Michelle and the other speakers, they want to meet you. They want to spend time with you. They want to help you. They want to coach, consult in real time and in things that aren't theory, things that we can dive into your business and help you grow while you're there with us. Right. You know, done are the days in my mind of filling notebooks and walking out of conferences. How can we make real impact and real change in the time that we're there? Right. Business professionals, folks looking to level up and grow and expand. You're giving your time and energy to be in that room around those people. Let's make an impact while we're there, and then bring that energy in momentum outside of that event and continue to become the better leader that you wish, want, and know you deserve to be. So thank you so much, Michelle. I'm so excited for Impact Effect. As she said, September 17th and 18th, right here in downtown Nashville. We've got an amazing venue, amazing partners. We've got so many cool things and experiences and some folks that are going to be joining us. So we'll see you there. And thanks for joining and listening today.
Thanks,
I'll see y'all
everyone.
later.
Bye.